Welcome to Beyond the Box, and I'm your host, 𝐼𝐴𝐻𝐿𝐴, and today I am very honored. I feel really blessed to be surrounded by my brothers, African men, that are here to talk about the work that they do, the important work that they do in the neurodiversity space. And you guys have likely had an opportunity to listen to Prof. Sifutu's podcast and insights about what University of Johannesburg Neurodiversity Centre is doing in the space of neurodiversity. So the gentlemen that you see here today, they have come as a result of Prof. Sifutu. So we're very grateful for that, Prof. Sifutu. So welcome, gentlemen, to Beyond the Box. It's such an honor to have you.
Well, thank you very much for the invite. We are also happy to be here.
I'm just going to introduce our guests based on the brief information that I know about them, and I'll give them some time to introduce themselves as well. We have Mr. Paseka Lekale. Yeah, Mr. Paseka Lekale. So he's the chairperson of the amazing initiative that that Prof has told us about previously. Maybe the best way would be to start with you, Prof, just giving us some introduction around that initiative in particular, fathers of children in neurodiversity.
Thank you so much. Maybe I should start by acknowledging, first of all, our Vice Chancellor, Professor 𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴, who is always supporting us. Just a few minutes ago, I was exchanging with him to let him know what is going on here. But above that, we also have our Dean, Professor Nadine Peterson, who has actually supported us financially to be able to be here. It's not a small matter, and we really appreciate it. But the fathers also will mention other people who have actually supported us to be here. Why this group? I think we started talking about in my department, educational psychology, neurodevelopmental learning needs. But having traveled around the world, my experience gave a spin to that to say, what if we look at it more positively? Because neurodevelopmental learning needs or disorders is a medical approach to neurodiversity that normally will focus on what the challenges are. It was at that moment when we were talking with Dr. Nushin Amin, who is the staff member of the Gauteng Department of Education, that we started talking about the absence of fathers. She actually mooted the idea of where are the fathers? Because this was the space where we were with a lot of teachers and youths. You can imagine that most teachers would be female, most educational psychologists would be female. And then she asked that critical question that we are missing out on the fathers here. This is how this group was born. It was born because these fathers were already members of the Randburg Clinic School, where their children go to school, and that helped us to be supported structurally, then to develop the idea further. And we had our first meeting. I would like, they will talk about it. I have said my bit, and I would like to give most of the speaking to them. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Prof, for that very important background information, which I believe the audience needed to hear so that they understand where this is coming from. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Mabuza, Buzwe Mabuza. You said you prefer Buzwe, right?
Buzwe, Mr. Mabuza,
Okay.
still one person.
Okay, still one person. Yeah, maybe take us further from where Prof has just laid the foundation about, firstly, your role, so the audience know who you are, and what brought you here in the space where you are working with Prof. Sefuthu and the Neurodiversity Center?
Thank you, ma'am. As mentioned, my name is Buzwe Mabuza. I bear the office of the Public Relations Officer for FCN. Essentially, FCN, how it was established was we received an invite for a fathers gathering, if I can put it that way, and that is where the idea was pitched to us as fathers to say, as fathers of children who are on the spectrum of the neurodiversity spectrum, how would we feel about being involved or spearheading an initiative that would essentially, impact way beyond, what it is that we are doing in our respective corners, and it was something that we jumped on, so to speak, and that's where the idea essentially began to formulate. From there, we went away on a getaway where for a weekend, where we began to engage, and in the engagement is where then we began to conceptualize what it is that we stand for, what is our identity, who we are, what is it that we want to do, and what sort of impact we would like to make. So, in a nutshell, FCN is a South African-based organization with a global approach in order to support, educate, and assist the neurodiverse community, and not only those impacted directly, but those living with those who are on the spectrum and have the condition. So in a nutshell, that is who we are, and that is what we do.
Interesting. So you guys exist to promote awareness around neurodiversity, the FCN PR agency.
100%. So beyond just promotion, we want to support, we want to educate, then bring awareness. Because it's multifaceted. There's no point in bringing awareness yet people are not educated or well educated about what these conditions are, what are their symptoms, and what are the challenges, what are all these things. Because the idea is, we at the end of the day, we're doing all of this because we want the neurodiverse community to be seen, to be heard, and to be integrated.
Absolutely. Very well put. Thank you so much, Buzwe, for touching on that. We'll come back to you in a minute. Maybe let's move to Ntate Paseka Lekale. Yeah, Ntate Paseka Lekale. Share with us a little bit about how you came to get involved in this and the role that you play, because I know you have quite a responsibility within the organization.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Ma'am Pahlele. As you had said, my name is Paseka Lekale. I'm the current chairperson of the organization Fathers of Children with Neurodiversity. I also am a father of a 17-year-old on the spectrum, also has ADHD. So just to expand on what Mr. Mabuza was just explaining. So what happened is that I am also the chairperson of the SGB, the school governing body at Randburg Clean School, which is a special school for kids with autism and severe behavior disorder. Myself and Mr. Mabuza are also part of that. So Dr. Nushin we've had a good relationship for the past few years due to my activism in the autism space. That's where I met Prof. Sefuthu. So at some point, she came to the school and said, Mr. Paseka, there's certain things that are happening that I think you guys can actually help us with. And she mentioned the father's group to say, why not start the father's group? Because I feel like the space doesn't honor the fathers that are present. You guys are bringing your kids to school every day. You come and face them. You are involved. You are doing everything. Even your SGB of the school, it's mostly the guys. But the narrative out there is that men are not involved.
And black men in particular.
Black men in particular.
The general perception, which
Yes.
is not true, right?
So she said, why not start an initiative where you guys can support other fathers that are struggling to be as involved as you are? And said, start an organization where you guys will be able to tell your own stories, your own way. Then as soon as we met as the guys, after we've gone to the island sponsored by University of Johannesburg, it was then when we realized that the problems are much bigger. It's not only about awareness.
Ah.
These guys that are on the group, they also need support themselves. Mostly men don't want to open up about the situations that they are in, or when they are feeling like something is not right and emotionally they are not coping with the child. So you won't find a father sitting at the corner crying by himself.
They tend to shy away
They
from
tend to shy
emotional
away from emotion.
vulnerability.
Yes.
Ah.
And then that causes some strain. And then these strains also ends up affecting the family dynamics.
Yep.
Now you start being frustrated, you start shouting at the wife, and at times it end up in divorce. This man was not actually doing these things with the intention of getting divorced, but things just happened. So we realized that we can play a big role by being open about our stories, sharing the challenges that we are going through, and then creating a space where men can know that this is only for us and no one else. Then they can be able to open up, share their stories, cry if they need to cry. We talk about things that no one would actually want to talk about in the public space. That's when this thing started growing. And unfortunately, we had an incident which triggered most of the conversations that we started having later on. One of the fathers in the early stages of organization took his own life. This was the man that was sharing the struggles that he has. He's a community leader, the expectations that are there, and financial strains that he's going through. And I think it just was too heavy for him. Then I put out the call to Prof to say, Prof, I believe we need to help the guys with mental health. This thing it's heavier than we thought. It's not just about, we need actual psychologists, the professionals, to help us to carry this weight. So that's when we actually, Prof Mpedi then sponsored the trip to the UJ Island, and we managed to talk about certain things that we can do, the strategies and everything, to ensure that FCN can be able to reach all these objectives that we needed to. And yeah, we are here today because of that trip actually. So certain things happen and they trigger certain conversations, and that's why we ended up having to work hard to pull some of the 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 things that the project that we managed to do for the year.
This is an important work that you guys are doing. You know,
Thank you very
the
much.
story that I'm hearing from you, it requires a lot of heart to be able to get involved in something like this. And you know, there's a general understanding that stronger families make for stronger communities.
Yes.
And the example that you used, if a father is struggling with emotional regulation or mental health issues, that literally trickles down to the family, you know, and that destabilize the family network. So the work that you do is very important, and it's nice for you as a chairperson. You also get to support the group in setting the vision of where you guys are going.
Yes.
As a collective.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. We'll come back to you in a minute, Paseka. Let's move to Onkgopotse Seleka. I understand you are a fungal. Well, I've never heard of that until today. What does that mean?
I coined it myself.
Oh, you coined it just like the Prof has coined a few names.
Yes, sure. And
A
it
few
should, it
words.
should it should go into some book or
Fungal. Let's see about it.
So my name is Onkgopotse Seleka. Funkel because I am not a father with a child on the spectrum, but I am perhaps in the category that Buzwe was referring to, living with or indirectly affected by, the neurological condition that one member of the family has. Also affected because I co-own and co-run an ECD with my mom, and we've seen quite a handful of children who are on the spectrum but are registered within that mainstream ECD. And maybe if I could expand, for me, it speaks to perhaps the lack of understanding of these conditions, the lack of terminology or naming, these conditions as such. You find that families are insistent that, let's put our child on at this mainstream ECD and utlaba right, they'll be fine.
Yeah.
Whatever this thing is. So my attraction and how I joined was as a result of that. Also because in my other life, I run a consultancy that does business development and accountancy. So most of my of my clients are either ECDs, non-profits, churches, and schools.
Mhm.
So that just really just brought me.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go back to you, Chair. Let's talk a little bit about your journey with your son, who's 17, 18 now.
17 years,
Can
turning
you-
17 next week on the 24th of January.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Yeah, so how was that like, the journey to discovery? At what age did you find out that he's neurodivergent?
So at the age of 3, my son was like any other 3-year-old, talking, saying papa, mama, the basic things, and everything was well.
Yeah.
Then a year or 2 years later, he started to regress. Then this all of a sudden my son, the speech was gone.
Mm.
My son is hyper, running around like we didn't know what was happening. And I had my son when I was 21, and my wife, Winnie Ramrula, who's now Lekale, happened to be 20 years old at the time. So we were still young. So at the age of 25, my wife now had to deal with a child that is developing certain habits that we don't understand. Luckily for us, we went onto the internet. We love reading. So we started reading about putting the signs that we are seeing there, and then it shows something about autism.
Interesting. So you went straight to the internet? You didn't go ask the doctor or the sister at the clinic?
No, we tried everything, but when you're using public facilities, sometimes you need to have an idea why you are there. So for us, we used to just say, no, the child is not developing the same. But there was no actual conclusion in terms of, or I don't feel like there was extensive work that was done to find out what is happening.
Mhm.
But also on our side, we were doing our own research. So we then realized showing signs of autism.
Mhm.
Then in one of the visits, then we mentioned, no, we think it looks like it's autism based on this and that and that and that and that.
And did you know what autism is at that
No,
point?
no,
Okay, it was
we just
what
read
you're
it, and then
finding.
we thought we would tell it to the professionals. They'd be able to give us more
Unpack it.
context, and but so that helped us to actually start getting somewhere, because then they said, okay, you need an actual diagnosis for this. So then we'll go. You just need to come doing consultations, and then we'll build a report for you. Then we'll refer you to the hospital at some point to meet the specialist that can assist you. 2 years later, my son needed to go to school, and everything was just taking too long, because you would get an appointment now and get the next appointment in 6 months' time
We're getting the diagnosis now.
just to get the diagnosis.
Uh-huh.
So that difficult period, then we made a decision to say, okay, what is it that we can do? Luckily, a friend of mine in the Free State, his mom happened to be the manager at a local clinic. So she told me about the government program that was currently happening in the rural area, where they are bringing psychologists and all these specialists that can actually assist us to get the diagnosis much quicker. So she said, one of the things that we don't have any child that we can say is on the spectrum. We still have to do a lot of, because the parents in the rural area, they don't believe in such things, and they believe the child is bewitched, the child is slow, all sorts of things. The grandmothers will tell you, no, don't worry, even your uncle was very slow, so he will get there one day. But with us, it was a different story. We had already told our families and friends that we're looking at this and this is the possibility. So at least the autism discussion was starting to happen. And that's when we brought our child to 𝐜𝐴ZE State. And they looked at the child, and then they referred him to Pilonomi. So he was doing, I think, bi-weekly to go get checked by the professionals there. And it took them around, I think, around 9 months to get the diagnosis.
To get the diagnosis.
Whereby in Gauteng, it was going to take us about 3 to 4 years around that time, because
Can
it
you
was.
imagine what happens to the child during that period?
Can you imagine what happens to
Yeah.
the parents during that
Yeah,
time?
indeed, the parent.
Because
Yeah.
we go through a lot. The child, remember, the child is confused also, because they don't know what they are supposed to be doing at a certain age. I'm supposed to. So for them, I don't know what happens, because but with us, I can tell you it was a very difficult journey,
Yes.
because we had my child's cousin was almost the similar age. he was developing quicker, and you could see certain things. He's reaching milestones.
And you were just watching that
We are
with your,
just
with your
sitting there.
wife.
We're taking him to crutches, then they are turning him back to say, no, other kids are trying to sleep, is waking them up. Now you have to take care of your own child.
And were you working? Because some people are being called out of work. Come take your child.
I was lucky to be working. It was not a good job, but it was a job. I could actually afford basic things like get a medical aid for basic things like going to the doctor, but to actually see a specialist, our medical aid wasn't covering that. The person that I think suffered the most is my wife. My wife had to stay at home. She couldn't even look for a job because no one was going to take care of the child. And then it's only later years when our child started attending school, then she was able to do long distance learning, which helped her to get her diploma. However, there were still issues that she needed to be home when the child comes back from school because no one else can take care of the child. He was potty trained and it took too long. So certain things that you would normally have with a child in primary school, for us, they were taking too long, and we were struggling with the milestones like it's nobody's business. So that journey actually helped us to understand what some of these parents are going through. I was lucky enough that my parents were still there, and my mother-in-law and father-in-law were very supportive. They were always there for us. So we got that family support that most people don't have. So
which makes a huge difference.
Which made it much easier for us to handle. I think my wife was also getting that support from the parents. So certain things we were able to do. My son was not going to get the diagnosis if my mother was not available to take him to these consultations. So that journey in the beginning was the difficult part. Now that he's old, there are certain things that you go through and you think it's nothing compared to what I went through when he was still young. So I don't have any struggles currently to say everything is just bouncing on me because I've been there, done that.
You've got the muscle
that
has been strengthened through.
Yes. So currently, as a leader of the organization, and I'm talking to fathers that have the similar experiences. So we are trying to help the fathers that are going through what we went through. We are sharing our stories in how we handle this. So in our group, someone will just send a question to say, my son is doing this and that and that. Then different fathers would come with different, this is what happened to me, and this is what we did. This lucky thing is that we also have specialists within we have doctors, and the doctor would say, no, this is what we do. This is how you do it. Please try this, try that. At times they will tell you, you know what, don't risk it. Go consult. Someone else will give you a better. It has actually helped us the group has worked wonders for us. It made everything easier because now it's no longer just the executives that are sharing their ideas. The entire group is working together to make sure that we get all the answers.
I'm curious to know whether you have a national representation in your WhatsApp group. Maybe that's something the PR will answer. But it's just heartwarming to hear that you have this. Generally, these groups are run by moms, right? In my language, in Spedi, we have a thing that says, and I'm sure in other languages there, have you heard of that? So now we're saying because that's essentially what this is.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. You should come up with your own. You should come up with your own.
The good thing we work with professors all the time.
Yeah.
We should be able to
develop something.
Win one of those.
Absolutely. I mean, we have a buntification. Is it buntification or buntification now? Ubuntu Koshi. There we go. Sure. So come up with something as well. Well, go Google it. These are some of the terms that Prof has invented. And when I Googled Hepapreneurship, I Googled it and Google didn't know what it is. And until I said Hepapreneurship and I said Prof, and I also think I said UJ, and a research paper popped up. And it's just beautiful to see Google and other Oxford needs to catch up. Oxford, you need to catch up. We need this. We need this word in the dictionary. Yeah, it's so nice, Chair, on how you have unpacked the amazing work that you guys are doing, the WhatsApp group that exists, and how you have experts there that are essentially helping fathers to also get involved. Buzwe, before you talk about what's going on in that WhatsApp group, and I'm curious whether there's national representation, as I was asking Chair. Talk to us about your journey. How did you, I know you have a child who's neurodivergent. Was your story similar to that of chairperson, or was it slightly different?
Mine was slightly different purely because, for starters, where I'm based, I'm in Joburg, so I'm in the metropolis. Essentially, that is where much of the advancement, I would say, is really at. As opposed to the outer areas of the country, other provinces and all of that. It's still That's still interesting because even in those areas there is still limited resources.
Yeah.
It's amazing because the problem is not a third world problem. In fact, even in the so-called first world countries, there is still limited resources and limited infrastructure when it comes to things like autism and neurodiversity. So we are pretty much all, as the human race or as the global community, kind of moving together at the similar pace, if I can put it that way.
Some
You'd
are
be
much
shocked.
faster than the others. I mean, you are essentially saying South Africa is not that far behind with
Hun-
the global.
In fact,
South,
I wouldn't know if
the
I would
North,
even
rather.
say behind, to be honest with you. I wouldn't know. Reason being is because, for one, autism is 70 years old globally. Now, in terms of the extent of research and the extent of
The data that's
study and
available.
data that has to be established and that has to
Uh-huh.
be adopted
Mhm.
in order to be able, just this conference that we attended, is essentially, the idea was to drive policy, around neuroinclusion. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In the education sector, and so the same goes to, some of these other countries where, I was playing golf earlier with a gentleman from the Netherlands. And when he spoke about his experience, he has a sibling, a younger brother who's on the spectrum. When he spoke of his experience, it was nothing different from what I've heard from some of the fathers in my group. You understand? So anyway, to go back to the question that you asked in terms of what my journey was. So what happened with us was, my son was my first boy. I'm excited. He's my first experience at raising a child, number one. So I don't have any other experience. What he is, it's what I'm learning and it's what I know. However, my mother-in-law, at around 18 months or so, could pick up that he's lagging when it comes to his milestones. And through that, she prompted us to just have him checked out. So we just started inquiries with his crèche, just to know how was his day, how is he at school and all of that. And, they'd mentioned things, although they at crèche themselves did not know, obviously. But they could pick up that he is different in terms of responding to his name. He wouldn't respond. He can hear, because at other instances when you're engaging him, he can respond. Though it may not be verbal, but in terms of, being able to shift and pay attention. So such reports prompted us to dig deeper.
So from your mother-in-law, so the school couldn't pick this up. The periodic medical visits that usually a child goes to, right? Your injection at 6 months, 18. They couldn't pick that there are, neurodevelopmental delays.
Hence, I'm saying to you that there is still so much education that must take. This is why FCN exists, because in bringing this awareness, we are also making sure that the various structures of society are educated and informed when it comes to the neurodiverse community.
Yeah.
Because even within the educated, communities,
Indeed,
there is still a level of ignorance.
Yeah, and what surprises me is that in the health sector, where it should essentially be picked up, when you go to the clinic, they should say this is where the child should be.
100%.
And raise a red flag. But you're right, there's still a lot of lags.
What you're saying right now is very critical and very pivotal, man, because the assumption is, because it's a medical institution, they should know. Meanwhile, neurodiversity is a different discipline from what a general practitioner deals with. Do you understand?
Yeah.
It's a different discipline from chiropractic, or, and this is why you have specialists. Specialists are there to focus and zone in on a specific discipline. And so when it comes to neurodiversity, there hasn't been that level of development within that space.
That's
Because even
right.
within that space itself, the information has to be filtered
Mm.
down to other
Mm.
areas of medicine, as well as
Yeah.
it. So hence I'm saying that the expectation would be,
Mm.
because you're a doctor, therefore you should know. That is not the case at all.
Absolutely, because I like that you're saying that, Buzwe, because I was reading something recently that talks about the clinical aspect of neurodiversity, which I think is where neurodiversity has been looked at. It has been looked at through the lens of medical, from the medical approach for a very long time. There's behavioral aspects to neurodiversity, which is why likely at the clinic or the medical people were not able to pick up that your child is missing certain milestone, likely.
Well, look, like I say, at that point, all that we looked at was he's not hitting his milestones.
Uh-huh.
There was no correlation between that and his neurological status. You understand?
I get you.
And so the process involved, first and foremost, we had to go see a pediatrician. Upon seeing a pediatrician, we had to get a referral to a occupational therapist.
Uh-huh.
Upon seeing the occupational therapist, they themselves had to do some testing and do some assessments, and they alone by themselves can't give the diagnosis. It has to be, as assessment prof, it has to be a collaborative effort.
Yeah,
between
multidisciplinary approach.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so that in itself, that entire process I've just laid out to you, can you see how it hasn't been much refinement and much, short circuiting of that process? Do you understand what I'm saying? That speaks to the fact that, in as much as I'm from Joburg, where everything in South Africa is essentially supposed to, incept from its start, or at least.
Indeed.
You understand?
I hear you.
We're still at a place where you have to hit a few corners first before you get to where you need to go.
4 years, 9 months. But what's the standard? What's the minimum time it could take, or it has taken, for one to get a diagnosis? It shouldn't take 9 months.
Africa.
Yeah, in South Africa.
No, there's too many delays. Again, depending on the area, we have backlogs in hospitals that can take months to years.
Absolutely, yeah. We will come back to that, Prof, because I'm also curious as to whether it's the case in the private sector, and so that's one. Number two, whether there are ways that who takes the responsibility of shortening the circuit, between all these interdisciplinary fields. But yeah, Musa, you want to take that?
You raise another very important point.
Sorry.
Okay, so you said you wonder whether in the private sector is that also the case, and then you said who then is supposed to assist in short-circuiting this process. Now, people, whenever I'm in conversation, people say, actually, what is the problem with South Africa? What is holding South Africa back? My view is, in South Africa, people don't want to solve problems. People want to make enough money so the problems don't affect them, which is the case that we are having with the private sector. Everybody wants to go and create a little cocoon that shields them from the problems. But that is a very short-circuit, or a very short-sighted way of thinking. Right now, a few weeks ago in Nigeria, an international boxer, Anthony Joshua, got into a car accident, and it took hours before emergency services could arrive because infrastructure does not exist, or the infrastructure is bad. It's just not there. Now, he's got money, but guess what? He's in a situation where 2 people had to die simply because help could not get there fast enough, because the roads are not there, because the infrastructure for emergency services is not there, and the likes. You understand? And so, in as much as you may think, yes, I've got the money, and because I've got money, I can go to private clinics and I can go there and get the help that I need. Essentially, if we as a community or as a society are not able to take care of each other, we are as poor as the next third world country. So
that is so profound. That is very profound, and I like that you expanded it a little bit more. That it's an African issue. It's absolutely an African issue.
It is.
Yeah.
Just the other day with the fathers, as we were chatting, talking about being here and being able to impact and influence policy, around education and that. Somebody threw in an anecdote and said, if you actually think about it, if we start now, by the time that policy comes into effect, it's going to be in 5 to 10 years' time, and our kids are no longer going to benefit from this. And this is where the mindset, had to come in to say, when you plant a tree, it's the next generation that's going to enjoy the shade, not necessarily you that did the planting. You're with me? But we have to have that selfless approach if we want to be able to take this country forward. We as the citizens, we have to be active citizens where we don't sit and wait for somebody else.
That's Prof. Sefutu and UJ have all the money, they must fix it.
You understand what I'm saying?
Separating yourself from
because Woolworths is always running initiatives of helping the disabled. They're gonna see how to give my child, a job. You understand? So we have to be the ones that come up with our own solutions to the problems that we face.
So Buzwe, essentially you're saying nobody's coming to save us.
100%.
We need to tackle these things head on.
100%.
Even short-circuiting the time it takes to get a diagnosis, we need to own it.
100%.
Just like what you guys are owning now. Okay, let's go back to the process. So your child, you get all these experts together to help you find a diagnosis for your child because of the missed milestones.
So by the time we eventually receive a diagnosis, so I'm a resourceful person by nature. So first thing I did is research. What is all? I knew it. I've heard of the word autism. I had an idea what it was, but I really didn't know what it was all about. So that's the first thing I did. Why did I do that? Because I had to educate his immediate community, which is my family, his grandmother, his aunts, his uncles, and all of that. Why? Because I needed to deal with this. The ignorance, and at times it's not stupidity, but it's just not having the knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where people don't ask questions like, "What is wrong with you? Why can't you do this? Why can't you throw the ball?
What can you do like that one?
Why doesn't your child speak?"
Yeah.
And these things are not things that are said because people are being malicious, but it is absolute. It is pure and authentic interest and wanting to know, or just trying to figure out what is going on because they do not understand, they do not know.
I like the way you're looking at this, Buzwe, because it's very mindful. Because other people, the way they respond to situations like that, yes, you're frustrated because your child is getting this treatment of what's wrong with your child is naughty. But the other side of the coin is they lack knowledge. And I believe in the kindness of humanity, that if they have knowledge, they will behave differently. So you took it upon yourself to say, the immediate network of where my child is has to know and understand.
100%. Because at the end of the day, as much as the development of the child is upon the parent, but a child is raised by a village. Because at some point my child is going to go visit. At some point my mother's going to be minding the child if I've got commitments. At some point my child is going to be playing with the other children in the street. And if these people do not understand or do not know, they're going to victimize my child.
Indeed.
They're going to marginalize my child. But the more I can educate with them, the more they are able to create a conducive environment for him to progress and for him to develop, And I think one of the most challenging things is upon receiving of diagnosis, there is an aspect of denial that often sets in.
Yes, I wanted to ask about that, the grieving period that you go through.
The challenge with the denial is that it delays progress.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yeah.
Whereas the minute you receive diagnosis, you want to apply immediate intervention. You understand? The sooner you can accept, the sooner you can be able to put things in place and structures in place to ensure that the child is not delayed any further.
Sorry, go ahead.
The child has an environment that allows him to develop at their pace through the systems that make sense to them. There's a Maori, I just forgot the saying itself, in the Maori tribe, where if they're dealing with somebody that has neurological challenges, they say something around the lines of, we meet them where they are.
Indeed. We love that phrase at Kids Innovate Africa, by the way. Yeah.
And so this is what I was trying to achieve, to be able to say, do not put pressure on him, allow him to be who he needs to be in order for him to become who he needs to become. And I'm talking to you right now. My boy is 13. He's a blue belt karate student. He's a golfer. He's a mountain bike cyclist. And he's a painter as well.
Oh, imagine if you haven't gone through that journey of discovery, of learning and understanding, such that you create such a conducive environment for him. You wouldn't have been able to put interventions in place to ensure that he gets to where he is now.
100%. And look, a part of it also had to risk the chances of being ostracized by family, simply because I found myself in instances where I had to reprimand my family to say, no, God is not going to heal him. This is our life. This is the life we are going to live. We have to accept it. We have to embrace it. And the sooner we can do that, the better it will be for everybody. And so to a degree, I had to be a bit stubborn and steadfast to say, guys, this is the reality. Stop it. Because the funny thing, with the neurodiverse communities, whatever they lack in one sense, they make up for in others. So as much as they may not be verbal, but they can read energy in a room in a way that you and I could never even imagine. Do you understand?
Absolutely.
And so to ensure that there's no feelings of dejection, to ensure that there is no energy that says you're not welcome here, or there's no energy that says, oh, you're such a tall order, or you're such a job. You understand what I'm saying? They begin to
they've got very high
sensibilities,
sensory awareness.
Yes. And so this was just to make sure that there's nothing I've left unchecked, or there's nothing I've left to chance. I had to make sure everybody around us gears up, and we actually just come around him to make sure that he has every opportunity and every resource and everything else that we can do. Sometimes the problem is we want to throw money at the problem.
Well, you've given myself and certainly the viewers a lot to think about. I mean, with a few lines that you've mentioned, a lot of depth in what you're saying. And I want to ask Prof now, because Buzwe's case is not common. The way he approached the problem, Prof, from what I'm hearing, his grieving process wasn't that long, right? Because if it might have been long, but his response time was quite swift. Engaging the family, educating himself, changing the environment where the child is, but also making sure that he separate what we often meet in our cultures, that this is something we're going to play it off, don't worry. But he was quite firm to say, that's not the approach we're going to make. What do we say to those families they're taking longer to grieve, which often makes them ineffective in bringing about intervention? One, that are still saying, we are going to play this off, it's going to disappear, just wait. What do we say to those families?
I would have liked my brother there to comment too, but I will comment to say that unfortunately, I'm going to be a little bit philosophical about it. As human beings, our own belief systems sometimes impede our progress. Once we can get to the acceptance of saying this scientifically is a stone, but we can spiritually look at it from another angle, but the reality of it is that it is a stone and we need to accept it as such. This is what he's saying, so that we treat issues that surround neurodiversity with clarity that says they need to be addressed now. If we keep praying over years and there's no change, what does that teach us? We are not even belittling prayer, because there are some people who will believe and deeply believe, and maybe miracles happen in their lives, but it's not everyone. And when that happens, we need people to actually take the bull by the horns and say to themselves, we are going to go to the hospital, we are going to get diagnosed, we are going to get whatever other services we need to address the issue at hand. However, I would like him to be given a chance also. He has been quiet for some time
Absolutely.
to address this particular one. Thank
Absolutely. 𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿, I'm going to give you a chance to answer this one. And the reason why I'm asking this question, 𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿, is because I lost my sister back in 2011 due to a neurological condition, right? Multiple system atrophy. And it took a very long time for her to get a diagnosis. And it's quite common, Prof, that when you cannot get a diagnosis, which is the case in with neurodiversity, getting a diagnosis take quite a long time, as we have had. If you cannot get a diagnosis, you are trying and you cannot get it, it's quite easy to default to other alternatives. Yeah, because I remember my sister trying to travel and get somebody to pray for her because they just didn't know. They've exhausted medical aid. Nobody's telling them what this is. So people get desperate. Can you talk to that, 𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿?
Sure. So thanks for that problem, Prof. However, so my experience in the space of ECD is that we find that most of the children are left with the grannies, and then grannies then represent a particular generation versus the younger, who would be the parents, whom you'd expect that at discovery or at realizing that there might be something that's not right, they would respond faster. But we should also appreciate that then those parents are at a particular LSM themselves.
Yep.
So also that plays a particular role insofar as how quick one responds. If this thing is going to cost me, let's find something that's easier, cheaper. So I've seen quite a number of our children at this particular ECD who are brought up by their grandparents, whom, when speaking to them about, based on my exposure to neurodiversity, shouldn't we try this? Can we try that? Their default is, again, African traditional. It might be because, as Prof says, belief system, but I also believe it goes hand in hand with the affordability of.
Interesting. Very interesting perspective, hearing that the public sector does provide the services. And
So,
and the mom of the generation
Sure.
you're referring to
Right.
have access to the cell phone.
And I think maybe it's also in the culture of our people where if there are kids who get grant, the grant money does not get used for the well-being of the child. It's used for other things that I shan't dare to mention. So it's also at and I think that's why with FCN, our mission in as far as education and awareness is to bring these things to light. Yeah. And I mean, I'm in the space of skills development and training. At my firm, we often run by every second year we run an intake of children or people who are living with disabilities, because we recognize that they are oftentimes excluded, they are oftentimes marginalized. I had a training for about 20 kids 2 years ago, where about 4 of them were blind, and they are in their late 20s, because as they're being brought up in their own respective families, there's a shame around them, so they get discarded off to the rural spaces, so that we don't get to deal with them, we don't get to see them. And so you leave them to the devices of what rural response exists. And we often know that the infrastructure, whether it be medical and otherwise, is quite few and far in between in those rural spaces. So yeah, so that's my contribution. I'm not sure if Buzwe, sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, one of the challenges that we deal with as the Black community is the challenge of inadequacy, given our historical context. So, what tends to happen is that when you have a child that does not seem to tick every box, they become walking evidence of your inadequacy. So what happens then, people oftentimes will tend to not want to give testament or want to accept that there is an inadequacy in my being.
And I'm curious, are you saying that, Buzwe, because neurodiversity has got a genetic source?
Ma'am, when it comes to that opinion, I have no opinion at all. That's a medical opinion. I don't know. I'm just an interior designer by profession. I couldn't tell you.
Okay, let me give you.
So sorry, let me come in because I've just remembered the point I was driving at. To what Paseka said earlier, Kore, when the grannies, see this with your child, their grandchildren. Ahman, there's someone down the line who was like this. And my other area of interest, and particularly in attending this conference, was what then do we call this? Kasisutu, Kaspiti, Kasklosa. One of the doctors had an interesting, when talking to the subject of mother tongue based education. Can we find names for these things? A white Christmas to a South African person, or wakokasi. If you were to loosely translate that, kiss me some shop, but what is that to be? That you're trying to say, I guess what in the English version, you're talking about snow, Christmas, that type of thing. So my interest is pushing, what do we call this thing? Because unless we have a name for it, kasetsu, then we will never get, I don't know, Prof, if we're ever going to be able to marry it then to the scientific research, because kasetsu, what is this thing called? We often hear wahlanya. I hashabo.
Something wrong with it.
Something is wrong, and
Yeah.
then that's where we leave it at. So for me, it's important that we get names for it in our native languages, so that we can maybe be able to then bring the awareness and teaching or education to them closer, because then their understanding, meet them where they are.
We'll get to you, Buzwe, because you wanted to add something.
Sorry.
And then chair.
Yes.
Yes, I wanted to say that unfortunately, the scientific nature of Africans has not been nurtured to a level where it can be universally acceptable. Some of us grew up knowing that there are some people who are flying by night, and we now are able to fly in planes. But that science existed in Africa pre-aeroplanes. And the question is, in line with what he is saying, at what point are we going to bring those
The
to a
indigenous
level where
knowledge.
we can go back and say our indigenous knowledge systems have been so profound, so powerful, but what can we find in them that can help us describe what we are looking at here? He referred earlier to a concept called translanguaging, where now people are switching, between languages to explain. When I said I wanted to be philosophical earlier, I caught myself saying, let me not. But let me briefly explain that as human beings, we do what I call creating a being of reason to explain phenomena that is not understandable to us.
Interesting. I don't know how to feel about that, Prof, because I'm thinking phenomena that's likely understandable in the Western culture, but not necessarily understandable to us, even though it also affects us.
No, in any culture. In any culture. An example. When it is difficult for a family to say, this child in front of us, what do they have? What is it that we are dealing with? It is an unknown. We don't understand it. We can't explain it. Then we create a being of reason in our heads to say, �𝐤𝐤𝐿𝐴. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So ultimately, we give it a name that we can't even explain ourselves. So this is a quagmire that we are dealing with in terms of neurodiversity right now, which through digging back deep into our language systems, we need to come to grips with what it is. The issue of why he says, I can't deal with that one right now, it is because even in the scientific space, there's a lot of mistiness around the conditions that is being researched up to where we are now, we can't put up a finger on the pulse and say, in reality, this is it.
Yeah.
It is work in progress. That's why their word is so important, because then we need to understand what is behind these experiences and how do we explain them such that we use them to be able to help families to deal with the conditions in more effective ways.
Sure, I love the way you answered it, and I have to keep myself, because now, in my mind, I wanted to say some. Yeah, I forgot what I want to say, but I know I wanted to say something alongside the fact that it's explained that already neurodiversity is about how the brains are wired. So the typical brain is wired a certain way, and that's kind of a common way that general brains are wired. And therefore, if somebody's brain is wired slightly differently and that affects how they view the world, how they interact with the world, shouldn't that be an explanation enough to say, because how somebody's brain is wired is either environmental or genetic. So, but I think I'm going to leave it where you left it. I'm just trying to interpret and kind of bring it to myself, how I'm understanding what you're saying. I don't know if I should go to, okay, go for it, Buzwe, then I'll give it to you, Chair.
I just want to chime in on what Prof touched on, which I think is, again, very, very important in us being able to reach where Mr. Seleka was alluding to. Prof spoke about how African science has not been nurtured. For me, it touches a very sensitive place, simply because I often say, colonization disrupted our existence. There were things that were in place to help us in our existence and how we lived. There were societal rules and guidelines of how we engage with each other and so forth. However, through that process, a lot of how we determined our existence was disrupted. That's one. If I can just quickly switch. Currently, my son doesn't speak any indigenous languages because he goes to a Model C school. Therefore, the language of instruction is English. As a family, to try and help him, we said, let us not confuse him. Let's speak to him in the language that will be easiest for him, because the first struggle was he was nonverbal. You understand? Yeah. He has delays. Just who he is. He has, one of his challenges, or one of the symptoms of autism, is delays. So he delays to grasp, he delays to comprehend, he delays to express himself. So let's stick to English, right? Now, that in itself, as I sit here, I'm already saying is a problem. Is a problem, you understand? Simply because what now happens is that we are, one of the biggest achievements of colonization is industrialization. Because when they colonize, they need to convert the local human beings into human capital that is going to feed this industrial complex. So much of our lives as we live today are a result of the industrial complex. We spend so much money and so much time in school. For what reason? In order to be able to get into the industrial complex. You look at science, you look at medicine, that in itself has become an industrial complex. Therefore, in order to gatekeep the capital, you have to ensure that the distance between the problem and the solution is kept within a particular space, you understand? And this is why today, whenever we think of African solutions, there's a short circuit in our brains. Because the first thing we think is witchcraft. That's the first thing we think in our minds. Backwardness. The fact that what Prof said to me just told me that there was a concerted effort to essentially ensure that African science doesn't achieve or reach the potential that it's supposed. In fact, aloe, for crying out loud,
Yeah, aloe vera.
aloe.
Yeah.
I just speak about that. Already, I'm sure you can make the connection to what I'm talking about. Do you understand what I'm saying? So you begin to see how, in our, when we had the Autism Africa conference, we spoke about applying African solutions to African problems. Since that conference, my brain has struggled in contextualizing that, because I sat down and I said, but wait a minute, everything that is African, we don't want. You spoke about the fact that we know of people who fly at certain ungodly hours. We don't want to be associated with them, but aeroplane, I'm there. I'm there at the airport. I'm checking in. Well, what gate am I going? Do you understand what I'm saying? So for me, this exposes a more complex and bigger problem to the issue that we've got. Because until we get to a place where we are able to find the native name or the indigenous name for these conditions, whether you're talking about dyscalculia, whether you're talking about dyslexia, whether you're talking about schizophrenia, whether you're talking about Down syndrome, until we've, they say, Prof, language is the custodian of culture. So until we find the language, it is only through then that we'll begin to finding some of the answers that we actually need.
The questions that you are asking, Buzwe, are very thought-provoking. And
blame him.
Okay, Prof, for all these things. But what I'm taking away from what you were saying, also merging with the first chart that we had with Prof out at UJ, was the fact that they are establishing systems to address that, or to readdress all those imbalances. They've got African Association of Neurodiversity. You also have a journal, I think, that's running. And the fact that you have Autism Conference of Africa, that says quite a lot about where we are going, right? Yes, there's a lot that so there's a lot that we still need to fix and to correct. However, I'm hopeful about where we are going. Prof?
I just want to say before he comes in that at this particular conference, I was so pleased to hear how people received these three gentlemen's presence here, and the fact that we have pushed boundaries in terms of promoting understanding of neurodiversity. He keeps on saying we're here to educate, we're here to share our experiences so that people know and understand, and that is key. Later on, when we reach out to others, at least we should have prepared the ground through conferences. This is an education conference, and if educators are left behind in terms of understanding neurodiversity, it's a non-starter, because these big names here he has been talking about, dyscalculia, these are what teachers are dealing with, but most don't understand what they are dealing with, and this is a milestone for us.
Talking about solutions and in terms of what the center is doing, as FCN, we are also trying to find ways that we can meet some of these problems, get solutions and meet the caregivers and the parents halfway. As Mr. Onkgopotse was saying, that at the ECD center, he normally finds out that the grandparents are the ones that are taking the kids to recreation. So when these things happen, to say the child is showing signs of autism, the grandparent, the grandmother who's taking care of the child doesn't understand what's happening. For some of us that come from Free State, we came to Joburg looking for a job, which happens to majority of the people that are actually here looking for a job. The kids are left at home. They are left at home with the caregivers, the aunties and the grandparents, and those are the ones that never got the chance to be educated to the level that we are educated. Meaning there's a big problem that is being left at home. And then the person that is able to understand some of the dynamics that happens within the issue of neurodiversity is somewhere in Gauteng looking to provide for the family back home. That's when certain things take longer to be to actually be identified. And then, like Mr. Buzwe Mabuza was saying, he was lucky enough that he was there to be able to create an environment or the community that understands his child. Magogo at home doesn't know where to start. Like I was making an example of, he would say, oh no, I remember we had an uncle that actually started speaking at the age of 10 or 15. So they are hopeful that we don't have to do anything. It will happen automatically. So as FCN, what we did is that we did something wonderful last year. We decided, okay, let's have a colloquium. We call it 𝐿okgotla. We went to Free State. We had one in the native language of Free State, which is Sesotho. We had the entire conversation in their own language. What was the purpose of that? It was to ensure that we accommodate everyone. Not all of them are learned as we are. They didn't get the same opportunities that we got. But they need the same help that we need. So we got this information that we can package in a language or in a manner that can reach to the people that actually need it and can benefit from it.
Absolutely.
So we are trying to drive this thing to say, let's have all these conversations in the native language. We had it in Free State, in Sesotho. We are planning to go back again. Hopefully this time the groundwork can be much better. And then we are planning to do this long term to go to different provinces. We go to 𝐜𝐴ZG and do it in Zulu. So we're trying to define the norms to ensure that we start new conversations that people can understand in their own way. Prof was saying people used to fly at night. We go to the same areas where these people are talking about these things to say, how do we ensure that this new condition that most people are only taking, are only being aware of now, how do you ensure that we get you guys assisted in your own language, and then you can also ask us questions? Because the good thing is that Prof is always with us. We always have people that have that additional language knowledge. They can ask us questions in their comfortable way of doing things, which is using their own language. Then we can actually be able to engage and give them more information in their own way so that they can understand it better.
Yeah, it's so beautiful, Chair, the work that you do going down to the rurals. And I know that's something that Prof did talk about, that you're going out into the rurals where it's actually needed the most. So I'm hoping the rest of Africa, of South Africa rather, will get to engage with you, or that you multiply yourself such that you have people represented in those provinces. You wanted to add something, Onkgopotse?
Oh, yes. We also currently have some partner liaison again through the hospices of the Center for Neurodiversity at the UJ. There's a big project called Project 𝐼𝐴𝐐𝐿, where it's a finessed program or platform that has gathered knowledge, research from all corners of the world. And so as FCN, we are strategically positioned, dare I say, to be the only association in the country who has access to 𝐴𝐐𝐿. So we are then able to, in your own words, how do they say it? Where we're able to multiply ourselves to all corners of the country. And the beauty about 𝐼𝐴𝐐𝐿 is that it's virtual. At least 𝐿ebonkgono now, they are able to tap here and there. If not, our responsibility is then to reach out to those community centers where we can bring these communities under one roof and conduct this training, share the research that is collected from all corners of the globe, so that if at most they are able to relate to it in some way or the other. So yeah, kudos to Prof and 𝐴𝐐𝐿.
So with adding on to what Mr. Seleka is saying is that because with the 𝐿okgotla that we did in Venek, so imagine taking Project 𝐼𝐴𝐐𝐿 and adding it onto 𝐿okgotla and doing these things live with the parents in their own language. So we bring in solutions that are coming from all over the world, the research and everything. We add our own understanding of it, and then we take it to our people that don't have access to it. We get a community hall, we gather all the parents and the caregivers, we give them this information using the 𝐴𝐐𝐿 model, but with a bit of 𝐿okgotla kind of sort of
Ka puo ya
ka puo ya
rena.
rona.
Yeah. So I love the work you do. As you can see, I'm being wrapped up, but I had, I'm just going to ask one last question, if that's okay. I feel so proud to be in your presence. I feel maybe proud is not the right word. Dr. Vespa won't be happy to hear me say this, but I feel honored to
Yes.
be in your presence and seeing brothers that are doing such an important and impactful work. Buzwe, you talked about this, and the fact that um, as Africans we may be viewed as generally suffering from an inadequacy of some sort, and that we are not that far behind with the rest of the world. And I'm curious, you having been here at this international conference, where you would place South Africa. Where are we as far as addressing, raising awareness around neurodiversity?
For starters,
Mm.
such an organization exists only in South Africa.
Ah,
We'll start there. So I think that in itself can tell you where
that's
we are.
huge. Yeah.
In terms of, one of the things that I try and promote and I try and encourage is the idea of self determination.
Mm.
Self determination is the power to decide what happens to and around you. But as a society, we are at a place where we are constantly waiting for somebody else to direct us and to tell us what to do, where to go, who to be, and how to be. And until we are able to take this concept with both hands, we'll be in a place where we'll always consider ourselves behind where the world is going.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Wow.
I would like, before you close, Madam, to say that thanks to them, we are able to make noise around the world. In this conference, I had two colleagues from the USA. One of them is Professor Lauren Lindstrom. I referred to her earlier. And during breakfast this morning, she told me that, as per your question to say, in terms of creating awareness, in her own house now, there is a similar case that they are beginning to see, as Buzwe was describing it. And she has pleaded to say, could her husband also be included? I'm just short of sending her the information so that it can be sent to the chairperson, and then we will have someone international amongst us who is a grandfather of possibly a son with autism. This is seemingly something that we can say is not big, but for me it's huge, because if our voice is hitting that far corner of the world, it means really what we are doing is beginning to make waves. And our appeal is to the question that you asked earlier when you said, what is the representation of the organization even nationally?
Yeah.
And I think we fell short of responding that it is actually a national entity which has membership across the country. Would like as many people as possible to come forth, and because they can just join without even having to be here physically. The conversations that the fathers have every day are so educative. Hence, the eco model then is there to amplify that going forward.
Thank you so much, Prof, for covering it so well. I know the chair wants to say something, but in your comments right now, talk about how people become part of the organizations. Because one of the things that I particularly like, the fact that you're addressing mental health, right? And a lot of fathers are suffering in isolation because they have to be strong, right? Maybe talk to that. How do people join FCN?
Let me give it to
Okay.
So first and foremost, we're a non-profit organization that is self-funded by the very strained households of fathers. Some are selfless in fact, not some, all of us are in our varied contributions. And we have a WhatsApp group. I think currently we're on 200, in 200, and it's growing. Men who just simply respond to a link. So it's like a Google form where there are certain questions that we have to ask to make sure that you are coming into the right fold, and so that you can also, we get to learn about you in the Google form, how you are affected and where you are standing. And then you just really get to be part then of the WhatsApp group. And what we did not mention is that Buzwe, on a daily basis, around 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the AMs, will post
Ungodly hours.
some motivational a motivational quote, or as you've experienced, very thought-provoking, content that leaves one thinking, and you kind of aspire to be in that space. So that's just as simple as it is. It was important for me to mention that we are self-funded, so the funds to get us all around really rely on us. Because again, I've picked up in some of these funding applications that we make, particularly that are government based, there's so much red tape that we often get disqualified, by virtue of being a particular LSM and then many other things. So this is simply put, Chair, we are self-funded and non-profit, and it's by virtue of a WhatsApp group.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you for mentioning. Before I come to you, so essentially you are appealing to potential donors that are out there to say this is an important program that we want to scale, and to do so we need support.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just to add on to what Mr. Seleka said, the Lekgotla that I spoke about in Free State, we went there using our own money. So sometimes we have certain things we have to do within the house, and we always take that money from our households. It creates that sort of rift between yourself and your partner, because now it looks like you're prioritizing FCN over the needs of the family. So this finance thing is affecting us in different ways, and I would like it to, I would like to see FCN at a particular point where we are free to actually think out of the box. Because remember, when we don't have the finances, it limits your way of thinking, because the first thing you think about is, okay, we have this idea, how do we execute it without funds? Then you get demoralized. But just to add on to the how to join FCN also, can send an email to info@fcnza.org, which would then go to our office where Mr. Seleka is actually currently dealing with. And then that form will then come up there, because for you to get that form, you need to send an email to show your interest. And this also goes to the funders that are actually interested in being part of the journey. We're not particularly looking for we're looking for people that are interested in the journey also, that wants to actually help us get to where we need to. Because remember, like I said, myself and Mr. Mabuza, we have kids on the spectrum. Our kids are in school. We've gone through the journey, and like you're saying, you plant a tree to benefit the others in 10 years' time. We are doing this for the next generation, and we like, the sooner we start it, the better. So the more funds we have, and it allows us to move at a faster pace.
Absolutely, without a doubt. And I know South Africans are listening, and as you heard earlier, whether you are affected, or you have a child who's neurodivergent or not, somehow, somewhere, you are affected. So I hope you can listen to what they're saying as far as their needs are concerned, to reach out and support. It contributes to nation building, essentially. Do you have a social media page of some sort, or a website where people can go check you out? Should I leave it to the PR?
Please allow him to answer, and then Mr. Seleka will add in this,
Okay.
because I
The
believe that
marketing
one,
person.
that one might need to be expanded on.
Yes, ma'am. We are on the socials. We're on Twitter, on X, on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok. And so please get onto the socials, join in, subscribe, and see the work that we're doing over there. And you're able to communicate with us through those platforms. FCNZA.
So
Yeah.
we are also on LinkedIn, because I'm also particularly calling on corporate South Africa, and we've had the benefit or the pleasure of giving a talk at Vodacom. We're in talks with this other company that I'm actually reluctant to announce, because they too recognize that as employers they need to be neuro inclusive. They've got parents. We are in a generation where perhaps some of us are on the spectrum, just that we've never been diagnosed. So we're on LinkedIn, and the website is also soon to be launched in the near future.
And also, just to mention something that we actually particularly happened at the conference, that with us being part of the conference, there are formalities that are happening, and then there's those chairs that we have on the side, and with that happening, we managed to get some of the specialists that have volunteered to be part of the FCN group. We have one of the psychologists that said, you know what, I run my own practice, but if the fathers need help, you can freely refer them to me and then I can assist. So we also looking for such partners, the professionals. And yes. And then lastly, we had one of the presentation, it was towards the end now, where I was listening to it, and it's about relationship between educators and the parents that have kids on the spectrum. It was thought-provoking, and I'm glad that those conversations are happening. So I was in that room, and then we managed to ask some difficult questions. We even said, send back that presentation so that we can correct it.
Yeah.
So that's how we are contributing to the conference, because it's for educators, but we are here to tell our lived experience. So I believe it's very important for FCN to be part of this conversation.
Absolutely.
Because it helps them to have the practicality of whatever they are doing research on.
Without a doubt. And I know for sure after this, there will be further conversation that will be had, and we would definitely be engaging and see how we can also collaborate with you. So without a doubt, there's much more conversations that we will have. You talked about corporates, in your inclusive corporate environment. You talk about with the teachers as well. So we will be continuing the conversation. Any last words before I close? I'm being wrapped up. No, nothing.
No, I think we are sorted. Just that, with regards to our attire, please, we do apologize for this. We just had the conference now. We're trying to relax. So.
You don't need to apologize, because you are doing an important work. I think everybody can see FCN, Fathers of Children with Neurodiversity.
Yes.
So that's what matters. And I think you were being called out earlier by Buzwe. This is vanity, right? That's what he said, being worried about our appearance.
At least it was dealt with already.
Indeed, but thank you for bringing that out. From us here at Beyond the Box, this is goodbye. Until next time, please remember to follow, like, and subscribe, and you will hopefully get to listen to them in future again, because I really enjoyed the conversation, gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.